All right, welcome to live office hours. It's been a few weeks here with all the holidays. I kind of missed this. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, it was weird with Christmas and New Year's Day both being on a Wednesday this year in the middle of
Yeah,
the week. Yeah, definitely feels good to be back in action here. Excited to, I know people probably in like return your area right now, so maybe not super focused on moving inventory, but always excited to touch
right.
base with folks and jump into anything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think 25 is going to be pretty interesting. There's a lot of sentiment kind of shifting with resellers right now. Amazon came out, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this already. They're not going to raise fees, which like breaking a tradition. But again, this goes back to what I was saying a few months ago when Walmart, started to really kind of kick off and start to gain some traction, which is still doing. Um, I think it would. I mentioned that it would basically force Amazon to have to think differently. And to dive deeper into that, like Amazon's under a lot of regulatory pressure, right? During Q4, they're under a microscope. They're getting sued. There's class action lawsuits. There's a lot of pressure, and I don't think they get enjoyment out of making things hard for sellers. They really don't, right? I mean, these are people at the end of the day. But there are things that will force their hand and make them do things that they don't want to do because they have to. Now, I think what they're finally starting to do is trying to recover a lot of that sentiment. They're trying to shift things, into a better area for resellers. Um, but and I tweeted about this. I think last week. It might have been earlier this week. Like I think sellers that are wholesale dropping Amazon and going to Walmart, hoping for greener pastures, are really going to be in for a rough time. Here's what happens when you launch a new platform. You create unsustainable incentives. What I mean by that is they're not making a lot of money. Why? Because they want traction. They're not optimizing for cash flow right now. They're optimizing for how many sellers can we get on this and how do we get this up and running um, as far as we can. Over time, that will change. What they care about, what they're optimizing for, will change. That's not a bad thing. This is just how it goes. This is true for every platform. They want to get to scale and then start turning on profitability. Now, Walmart's a big company, just like Amazon. Walmart can do this for a long period of time. So who knows how long it's going to take them to start to make changes there. Now, I don't think I think going into 2025, we are out of the era of what platform do I sell on? And I think we're actually in a new era, which is which platforms do I sell on? Because you're getting different things, right? Walmart's not competing on velocity against Amazon. They can't do it, at least yet. Everything I'm saying here will change, right? Or could change. Now, Walmart, we know you can get more profitability on. Okay, well, should you care about one over the other? Not really. It kind of depends, right? Um, Sometimes you want more profitability, sometimes you want more velocity, but those two things are very, very important. If you're optimizing purely for profitability, this is what a lot of used booksellers do. They buy something for a penny, they wait 6 to 12 to 18 months to sell it for $30. That's really good profit margin, but it's not very scalable, right? You're having to hold inventory very, very long. You're not very liquid in a lot of those cases. Now, if you're building a scalable Amazon business, or I'm not even going to use that term anymore, a reselling business, I think you're going to have to start to think about, okay, well, I'm going to sell on both platforms. How do I optimize my inventory for like what percentage goes to Amazon, what percentage goes to Walmart, and really figure those things out, right? Um, so a few ways to think about this. If you're moving things really, really fast and you have tons of access to inventory, maybe start taking a little percentage of that inventory and feeding it into Walmart to increase your average profit margin across your business. On the flip hand, if you're only selling on Walmart and you're getting lots of profit, that's great. But you want to be able to scale that velocity and have more liquidity, do the inverse of that. So I think this year sellers are really going to have to start thinking differently. And my theory is that a lot of the platform dynamics will change, especially as Walmart starts to mature more, which every year they're going to moving forward. I don't know how, but they will. And Amazon's going to be making some changes as well to combat that. Right now, we have this cool, I'm going to call it a platform war, right? These are good things. It's chaotic, but it's good because it forces them to compete against one another and make better decisions to fight for you. As chaotic as it is and as uncomfortable as it is, I do think this environment being created is a positive thing for sellers, at least in the long term. So please hear me when I say, don't just abandon Amazon to go to Walmart thinking it's all going to be great. It's not. They have their own kind of issues, which of course they're working through just like Amazon is. But I really think that you need to view both marketplaces. And listen, this is what big brands do, right? Nike doesn't just sell on Amazon. They sell on Amazon, they sell on Walmart, they sell at Target. It's a portfolio approach. And what's kind of happening is, I mean, you don't have to do this. You can just be like, I'm good with Amazon or I'm just good with Walmart. Do whatever you wish, right? It's your business. But if you do want to build a sizable business, I think you're going to have to take this portfolio approach.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. I think you made a couple of really important points there. Like right now, with Walmart being so new, they are, like you said, providing a lot of incentives to try and get folks to join their marketplace and start selling
Right.
on Walmart, whether it is, completely abandoning Amazon, which we generally probably don't recommend yet, especially since Walmart is so new. But eventually they'll start to either lessen those incentives or take some away. But it will be interesting to see how Amazon's going to respond. I think we already kind of see some of that with them not increasing fees this year.
Right.
This is only my second January of being in the Amazon space, but that's a first in quite some time in terms of based on conversations that you and I have had. And then on top of that, I think starting to segue some of your inventory into Walmart to see performance is going to be a great way to start, kind of a trickle effect, if you will. It'll be interesting, and I don't have any initial assumptions or theories on consumer behavior on Amazon and Walmart. So it will be interesting to see if there are certain categories of products or things that sell better on one platform versus the other.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
Generally, we know that right now Walmart seems to be a little bit slower in terms of sales velocity, a little bit higher in terms of profit margin. But outside of that, we don't have a lot of insight or research or results to go off of in terms of better performing SKUs, better ways to reprice, better ways to get the most out of your inventory on Walmart. So it is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for sellers getting started there. And then in turn, like I said, we'll see Amazon respond, perhaps different platforms and tools that you use respond as well. So yeah, it'll be an interesting few months, but definitely a little chaotic, like you said. But it's never a bad thing to have more options and more things at your disposal. So definitely a good
Yeah.
thing overall for sellers.
Well, and what's nice is, this is a new problem selling multi-channel. A lot of and this is something we thought of early on, right? Because a lot of the software branding is AMZ, it's something Amazon, right? It's Amazon's colors. We kind of saw this years ago, of like, that's not really the future, like just one thing. And what happens is you build a software that is so overly fit on one platform that they actually can't support the other stuff. And so we've been very intentional about this. We kind of saw this coming years ago, and we're like, hey, we don't know which platform it will be, but there will be more. We want to make sure we have the opportunity to support more platforms. But the upside of this is it's a lot of the software you love just focused on Amazon. A lot of the internal conversations that I've been having with other software founders is like, they're deeply thinking about Walmart now and like trying to figure out how to solve that in a right way. So it's good. I think it's kind of forcing some innovation in our Amazon software space, which fantastic. I think that's an awesome thing that occurs. So yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. See Luke here. I just rejoined Aura a couple weeks ago after 3 months stint at SellerSnap. Happy to be back. I was wondering if traction was being made on the feature requests. And by the way, love to have you back. That's awesome, Luke. Welcome back. See, reduce the hot space on ASIN line items, so I don't keep clicking into ASIN details when I'm trying to set mins, and also allow us to press enter instead of click save while setting mins. Yeah. Without giving away too much, Luke, we have a lot of changes coming your way on the front end as well. So a lot of that you mentioned is going to be fixed and sorted out and updated. So yeah, not a problem there. Lots of traction being made on those fronts for sure. So you'll be very pleased in the coming weeks and months. and I know we haven't done this in a few weeks, but just as a quick, context for those might be joining us for the first time, this is open office hours, right? So we don't have a strict format here. Casey and I will jump in, have some discussion points to kind of keep the flow going. But any questions you have related to Aura, related to repricing more generally, selling more generally, trends, things of that nature, throw all those towards us. We love going down these different rabbit holes with everyone. It's really fun for us, but this is really for you. Just like if in college, your professor said, hey, I'm just going to be in my office for an hour. If you stop by and ask me questions, I'll answer them. Same concept. We can go super in depth, screen share, all that good stuff. But we just want to make sure that this is the most value add hour for you every single week. So yeah, it's interesting on the Walmart front because I'm starting to see a lot of ads, a lot of pop culture ads for Walmart delivery on streaming services now. So my wife watches a lot of Gilmore Girls. I do too. It's pretty great. And sure enough, we get an ad from Walmart, and it's Luke and what's her face? I forget. Lorelai, Luke and Lorelai, and they're really pushing. I'm hearing a lot of sellers getting calls from Walmart being like, hey, we want to get you on Walmart. What can we do to make that happen? I mean, they are pushing, and I think that's such a great thing. And listen, Walmart has always been technically advanced in a lot of the retail space. I think they were one of the first companies to have their own satellites to be able to do data linkage, just for faster refreshes. Crazy, like just like forever ago, right? But on the tech side, they haven't really, at least from my perspective, been considered like a tech company. You rarely hear graduating software engineers be like, oh, I'm going to Walmart. They're like, no, I'm going to Amazon. Like I'm going to AWS, which makes sense, with them having Amazon Web Services that powers like a large majority of the internet at this point. Like we use AWS. That makes a lot of sense, but it seems like they're trying to really change their culture to being more of like that tech company. So we could see, maybe a lot of engineering talent go over there. From Amazon, from other companies, all these other tech conglomerates, if you will. And I think that's a good thing. Again, more competition, the better. I think it's going to drive innovation. See, Raj, is there one-on-one training? There is. So for those who don't know, we like to do one-on-one onboarding sessions. They're not required. They don't cost anything. They're not super long, so it's not a huge time commitment. I hate when I jump into a new software and they're like, hey, can we spend like an hour with you? I'm like, that's a lot, man. They're like 20, 25 minutes. If they need to go a little bit longer, we certainly can do that. To schedule one of these, in the bottom right, when you're on the application or any marketing page, there's a little blue dot. Blue button. If you click that, that's going to open up live chat. Just jump in live chat and say, hey guys, I want a personal onboarding session or I want a one-on-one. You do that, we'll send you a schedule link, we'll get you sorted out. And we're not checking how much you're paying us for these, right? Like I always tell people, if they're like, hey, I'm interested in trying out Aura, what do I do? Here's my recommendation. Start a free trial. We don't ask for a credit card. It's very important. When people are like, hey, can you sell me on Aura? No. I'll tell you everything you want to know. I'll answer any of your questions. I'll geek out with you and show my passion for it, certainly. But at the end of the day, like you have to get in there and you got to see it for yourself because that's a visceral experience. So what I recommend, jump in, start that 14-day trial. Don't give us a credit card. Reach out to support immediately and say, hey, I want an onboarding session. We'll make sure you're able to get a full 14 days of actual usage. In that onboarding session, we're not going through a slide deck. We're not going through a demo account. We're actually in your account, asking you questions, trying to understand what are you trying to achieve here, and then we help you do that. So you don't leave with a massive list of notes to go take action on. We did it with you live. So you got to ask questions, look over our shoulders. We're explaining what we're doing, why we're doing it, all that good stuff. And you leave actively repricing the best way possible. So I highly recommend it. Great question, though. And we love doing these too. So Finn was just doing one before we jumped into this, which is nice. So
yeah, Finn's
Raj,
running our chat right now, so he'll be the person you'll actually have your onboarding session with. But yeah, definitely just ping him and he'll send you his link. I believe he does have some times for this week, but if not, definitely next week. So we'll be able to get you in there and set up as well.
Exactly. And Raj, welcome to us. Welcome to Aura. We're happy to have you. It can feel very it can feel very overwhelming and complicated jumping into, especially your first repricing software, right? There's a lot of moving parts, but we really pride ourselves on building software that is intuitive, easy to use. It's not overly complicated for no reason. Like, we actually measure how long it takes from somebody to start a trial to connect their marketplace and to be repricing. And we try to compress that as much as we can, because at the end of the day, you don't see value until we're actually updating your prices. So we want to maximize or compress, minimize the time it takes you to get to that value add. So hopefully you're going to enjoy the experience, especially for your first repricer. It's going to be awesome. But happy to have you on board. I'm curious to see how this return array read is going to be. I'm hoping it's not going to be too crazy. What is crazy? Marketplace Pulse, or is it Market Pulse? I think it's Marketplace Pulse. They do a bunch of like data analysis and cool reports. They came out with a blog post showing that Amazon had their biggest year last year, which, I think it's easy for us as sellers to just feel the competitive nature of things change and feel like it's not really getting better. But I mean, the data shows that it is. It's just the way you do it will evolve and change, right? What worked a year ago may not work today. Bundling has changed. But this is so important to have this kind of flexible business model, right? It really pains me when somebody gets hit with like a Section 3, right? And they're like, I have 2 weeks to solve this problem and get back up and running, or the business will go into bankruptcy basically because I have no capital. Please, please, please build your business to be, I hate to use the term anti-fragile because I think it gets used way too often, but you have an asset. You want to protect that thing, right? Just like having a personal emergency fund. You don't know what the emergency is going to be, but you can say, well, there's probably going to be one. Let me just have enough in there so I can go through that process and be okay. Even having a month's worth of your costs, salary, whatever it is, just to keep the lights on, so to speak. That even a month is a lot for a lot of people, but a lot of sellers struggle with that because they're like, well, the cash is just sitting there, not making me money. That's correct. It's like insurance, right? Insurance doesn't make you money, but it's really nice when you need it, right? Like, I had to go to the ER not too long ago, and it was nice to have health insurance because it would have cost me a lot of money. So it's one of those things that it's not really fun, but you do want to start to transition once you do have a profitable asset into protecting that asset as much as you can, without it obviously, decreasing your growth rate and reinvestment.
Yeah. I mean, everyone always tries to have like a personal emergency fund. You should definitely have like a business emergency fund as well.
Yes. Exactly. See, Luke, my returns haven't been too crazy yet. I think it's important to remember that a spike in sales is going to cause a spike in returns, which look extra bad as a percentage if your January sales are lower than Q4 sales. Very good call out on that, Luke. It is very easy to just be like, well, I only sold 10 grand, but I got 20 grand in returns this month. It's like, yeah, but you sold like 80 grand last month. So like all your returns came from last month, but again, if you start to look at your historical trend data on sales returns over the months and years, it allows you to kind of predict what's going to happen and then make certain decisions to kind of negate those being a problem, right? If you just know January is going to be crazy for returns, adapt for that and plan for that. And then it's expected, right? You want to get to a point where most things that can occur have already occurred and you can just predict that it will and expect it. Over time, as you gain your experience, your hands-on knowledge, selling, you start to notice there's really only a handful of things that can happen. And then if you just sit down with each one, Section 3s, we know that it can happen. Even if it hasn't happened to you, we know it can. Okay, well, what's the best way to handle that? And maybe just put like a little contingency plan in, or even just if somebody had a Twitter post on how Chris Grant did this, right? He had a whole video on how he went through his. Save that in your notes for later, right? That way, when it happens, you go, great. I have a starting point. I'm not starting with a blank page problem that I like to call it. I've got a resource that I can start to work through this. And now it doesn't feel unexpected. It doesn't feel disastrous. It just feels like a thing that could have happened that did. But you're way more prepared than just being sidelined and just being like, what the heck just happened? And that's what's cool about doing this for a number of years. Again, you see those patterns and you're like, it's one of five things that could happen. And like, I've got plans for all five things. Like, I can't control if it does or doesn't happen, but I'm prepared if it does. And ideally, they don't ever happen to you, and it's a null point. Um, it's kind of like if people say for like personal emergency funds, like, great, you have it. And let's say you turn 80 and you've never had an emergency. Awesome. You got 20 grand. Go enjoy it now, right? Like, you still got the cash. So it's one of those things that I think what's so nice about this industry being so community driven is people want to share, hey, I went through this. Here's what I did to fix it. Or asking questions and people give advice and stuff like that. Like, there's a big difference between just-in-time information and just-in-case information. I really like just-in-time information for the most part. But again, if the probability of something occurring is higher than, a certain percentage, I don't know, call it 10%, it's good to just have some information ready to go. Let's see. Alan, not Aura related, like the winky smiley face. As resellers, we deal with returns. Most are okay or slightly damaged box, as you may know. Do you guys have any insights on how we can move these items after we've received them back? What options do you know about? Yeah, this is a great question, actually. There's not a ton in this area. There's a few companies, I'm blanking on the name, that basically handle returns and resell. A lot of your bigger prep centers, or not really big, it's just there's a segment of prep centers that offer basically this as a service. And what they do is you ship it to them, they take care of it. They will basically sell it on eBay for you and then give you a cut of that. Another option is liquidation. You can tax write off that, or not liquidation. If you basically donate it with receipts, all that good stuff, you can use it as a write-off. That's one route. When I did wholesale, I didn't want to deal with it, so I just liquidated it and was just like, it is what it is. Not great at scale, to be honest. I was kind of lazy about it. But I think going to resell markets, like used markets like eBay, is probably a great thing. Listen, you can still sell things used on Amazon. That's also an option. It may not always make sense, but I think as much as I loathe eBay as a platform, it does work for that. But again, there are services that will basically take all the pictures, create the listings, they'll sell it on their account, track everything, and be like, cool. We're going to take, some will take a percentage of sales. Some might only charge you like a flat rate per unit kind of a thing, just like regular prep would be. I think that's probably more common from what I recall. But there are some options. So, if you're working with a prep center, ask them if they offer that as a service. They may or may not. We have prepcenter.com, so you can go and check those alternatives there as well. But there are some options for sure. Oh, returns. I don't miss those.
Yeah, I haven't been on eBay since I started to initially build my Blu-ray collection a few years ago. But
Go team. Nick, appreciate you, man. I just was chatting with Nikki there before we jumped on. Appreciate you, man. Awesome. Yeah, it's funny. Like if I order something from Amazon, I actually never return it. I give it to somebody else. It's just not worth the time and effort. If it's like an expensive thing, sure. Most of the time, I'm buying stuff for 20, 30, 40 bucks. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm not going to deal with it. I'll give it to somebody else.
Yeah. I was just setting up my new TV audio system that I got for Christmas, and nice. I had bought a new HDMI cord that was not long enough, and it was like $6, and now I just have too many HDMI cords. I wasn't going to deal with returning it for $5. So
listen, everybody's got a bag or a box of cables.
Right. 100%.
That why would you ever get rid of a cable is my question, right? See, John has a good recommendation here. You could try to find a local consignment store to deal with returns. That's actually a cool one. I haven't heard of anybody doing that. But like those consignment secondhand stores, that's actually really interesting. Those might fetch potentially better pricing too, depending on the location. Yeah, it's a great recommendation, John. Thank you for that. Yeah, over the years, just having so much tech, I have countless cables.
Yeah, all sorts of lengths,
Oh yeah,
HDMI
oh yeah.
cords, power cords, Ethernet
I,
cables, all
I think
sorts.
I have a power cable from like an old video recorder from like early 2000s that I clearly don't have and doesn't work, but I'm just like, I might need it. I don't know. I'm not much of a hoarder, but for tech, I'll hoard. Everything
Yeah,
else, no, absolutely not. Tech, we'll hold on to that. You never know.
yeah. And I feel like inherently, whenever get rid of something like that, then immediately get something where you're like, oh, that would have worked with that. Yeah.
Always, always. But it's nice when you do need it. There's a funny video, kind of meme, really, of like the older dad who just keeps all the random stuff, and like the son-in-law is trying to like fix their bed frame or something. He's like, wait a second, goes, digs through his basement, finds this one random piece of wood
Yeah.
carved a certain type of way, and just like, ha. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes it's like that. Let's see, Jeffrey here. I'm trying to set a strategy where I price above FBM by X% but match FBA. Is there a way to do that? And could you also briefly explain the maintenance options again? I'm still a bit confused about it. Absolutely. So there is a way to do that, right? So what you do is in the pursuit section of the strategy builder, what you want to do is enable the price differently against prime sellers. So what's going to happen is for that prime seller section, you're going to say match. The section above, the main pursuit, what do you want to do? That's now for merchant fulfilled. So now you're going to say, I want to be X% above, below, whatever makes sense in your use case. That will handle that for you perfectly, not an issue. Maintenance section is interesting. So I like to position this as a sub strategy. So maintenance section will only activate, if you will, when you are in the buy box. So you're kind of saying, when I'm in the buy box, what do I want you to do? Now, in a lot of cases, what we recommend is to raise your price by 1 to 2 pennies. Here's what's going to happen in that case. Let's say you're in the buy box at $20, but you're the lowest seller. Well, being in the buy box is better than not, but if the next seller's at $25, you can make more profit. So let's say we put 2 pennies there, right? We want to raise price by 2 pennies. What OR is going to do is it's going to raise you from $20 to $24.98, right? So that 2 pennies is the difference between the next lowest and where we take you. So the hope here is that you're able to raise your price, increase your profit margin, but still hold the buy box because there's a delta between you and the next lowest. Now you can do the inverse. You can lower, you can raise and lower. You can actually just say disable. Don't do anything if I'm in the buy box. Just leave me there. But our general recommendation is that you set that to raise the price by 1 to 2 pennies. 2 pennies is probably a little better in my opinion. That way you're just making sure that you're recovering more profitability and not just relying on, well, I'm in the buy box, that's good. That's not always good. Again, it's better than not, but if I can keep you in the buy box at a higher price and make you more dollars, I would much rather go that route. Casey, is there anything you want to tack on to that?
No, that pretty much nails it. And actually, let me share my screen just to show you, Jeffrey, that
Awesome.
section of let's see here, that section of the strategy builder. So can you see that screen there?
Here, let me get you added here. There
There
we
you
go.
go. Perfect. So yeah, this is an example there, Jeffrey. So this is exactly what you'd be looking for there. That top section would be pricing above by a specific percentage for those FBM sellers. And then that second option right there, price differently against prime sellers. You'll just want to check that and set that to match price. You can see directly below that as well if you want to price differently against Amazon. Let's say you're targeting the buy box, Amazon becomes the buy box winner there. You can check that box and you'll have the same repricing options there. Just to jump to that maintenance section here, as Dylan just mentioned, this is what we recommend. This will raise you to be 2 cents below that next highest offer, just trying to maximize those margins without losing the buy box. That's typically what we recommend. And then just to clarify a couple things, do not reprice. We'll hold you at the price you win the buy box at until you lose it, at which point it continues to follow its initial rules to try and get the buy box back. And disabled, will just have Aura follow your pursuit settings regardless of if you're in the buy box or not. So those do seem like they might be doing the same things, but they are just slightly different. So just wanted to clear that up. But yeah, that's everything there, and happy to share anything else as well there. But for now, I'll stop sharing that screen.
Nice. I love this, John. My dad has a drawer of like 15 RCA cables just in case, he keeps saying. Listen, when you go dad mode, life is good, you know? You got to go a little dad mode at some point. See, Jeffrey, thank you for that. To follow up, what would be the recommended choice for all the competition types for that strategy? So this really depends on what you're optimizing for, right? What we're really showing here is the like custom strategy, right? So we think about this, and we do have an article in the help. If you go to help.goor.com, we wrote out like our 3 recommended strategies. In the way I framed this, because I think you need to understand the context of why we're saying this. Every one of your competitors, including yourself, is in a different life cycle for their products. And what I mean by that is when you first come into stock, you tend to care more about profitability than velocity. But over time, you start to care more about moving that inventory at a lower profit margin because long-term storage fees, you want to be more liquid, whatever. Every one of your competitors is in a different phase of that same life cycle. So I kind of break this life cycle out into 3 phases, or, you know, when I say phases, I mean 3 strategies. So strategy 1 in phase 1, we're going to recommend Maven. Why? Because it's finding that balance between sales velocity and profitability. Because that's really the sweet spot. That's where we want to be at, right? We don't want to negate sales velocity entirely. So we don't want to be overly aggressive, but we don't want to be under aggressive either and miss out on a lot of profitability, sales, what have you. So Maven's going to handle a lot of the heavy lifting there for you. Now, as time goes on, this could be 30, 60, 90 days. Every seller is kind of different. You then go to phase 2, which is strategy 2. In this case, we want to become basically more aggressive. That's when we go to the buy box targeting strategy. And again, all this written out shows you exactly how to build it. But basically what we're doing is we're targeting the buy box itself. Whoever's there, we don't care. And then it does kind of change depending on the seller. Some people will just match the buy box, and that's plenty enough for them. Other sellers will start to price below the buy box because, again, they're shifting from I want profitability to I need to start moving the stuff now, right? You're kind of discounting your products, right? That's fine. We might keep the same min values, right? So we might be setting our mins at 15, 20, 30% ROI. That's probably going to stay. We're just becoming more aggressive in our price optimization. Phase 3 is basically liquidation. At that point, profitability is out the door. I just want my capital back and ideally not lose money. In that case, we're way more aggressive. We're still targeting the buy box, but we're most certainly repricing below the buy box by some amount. Could be as simple as 1 penny, could be 5 pennies. It really just depends. But the big difference between phase 2 and phase 3 is we're taking our min values down to 0% ROI. We're taking it down to break even, factoring in fees and costs, right? Because again, we don't care about I need to make money on this. We care more about I need my capital back so I can redeploy it into something more profitable. So those 3 are really like the overarching framework for how you want to think about your pricing strategies. And again, we have tons of documentation. If you go to help.goer.com, I forget the exact title of that article, but basically if you just type in strategies, you'll find it there. And we walk through everything I just said in way more detail and show you how to do those things. So that will certainly help because there's really no, we try to present frameworks for how to think about it, but there are times when things are different. There is no one strategy to rule them all. I wish that were the case. We're just not, even with AI, it's just not there, right? Because there's so much nuances. Everybody's business is kind of slightly different too. Like I might start to liquidate at day 30. Somebody else might not liquidate until, 6 months later. And nobody's right or wrong. It's just, it depends on what you're doing. So it's hard to give without knowing exactly what your end goal is of a strategy, it's hard to make an exact recommendation for what it should be. But if you ever have questions, if you're like, I have this idea of what I want to do, but I'm not sure how to build it, jump into the chat, that bottom right button, click that and tell us that, hey, I want a strategy that helps me achieve this goal. Awesome. We can definitely, we'll probably just create it in your account, walk you through it. And then that way you understand, okay, cool. Here's how I do that now. So I think that will help. But Casey, correct me or jump in if there's anything additional there.
Yeah, I think your initial outline of kind of starting focus on profitability and getting more aggressive till you eventually liquidate, that's generally what we recommend. Obviously, every business is slightly different, every listing slightly different. So always take those things into account. Nobody knows your business better than you do. So
Yep.
always adhere to your own best practices for what works best for you. In terms of if you're just trying to win the buy box, you actually won't want to use Maven. Maven tends to hover just slightly above that buy box winning price. Maven's designed to essentially find the optimal price for a listing. With so many sellers on Amazon, that tends to create downward pressure on the buy
Yep.
box, which means that optimal price for sales velocity and profit margin is going to be slightly above that buy box winning price. So if you are just trying to win the buy box, you'll just want to go right to that buy box targeting strategy. And then in terms of winning the buy box, the only thing we really know about Amazon's algorithm for determining the buy box winner is the price, the shipping times, and your seller rating. The only thing you have direct control over is going to be your price. But Jeffrey, in case you're asking about how to reprice against like FBA, FBM, and Amazon, like in that specific section that we just highlighted there, Amazon sometimes prioritizes themselves over other offers, even if they don't have the best offers. So you do tend to have to be a little bit more aggressive against Amazon themselves. And then FBA will probably be like moderately aggressive, and FBM you can probably be the least aggressive against if you are an FBA seller. I've seen a number of different approaches there, but some folks will price like 2 cents below an FBM seller, 5 cents below an FBA seller, and then maybe 10 cents or more against Amazon. I don't have any direct recommendations or research or anything to back up the performance of that strategy, but that would line up with our general knowledge of how Amazon tends to prefer certain offers and sellers in the buy box over like FBA over FBM, sometimes Amazon themselves over FBA. So that would just be my initial thoughts there. But just to circle back, if you are just focused on the buy box, you'll just want to use the buy box targeting strategy there.
Yep. Nice. Yeah, if only they would tell us how everything worked, it'd make our jobs easier. But it's a lot of testing and guessing and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. So especially with dealing with Amazon, there's a lot of nuances, like Casey was saying. I've seen listings where you can compete against Amazon all day long and win. I've seen listings where no matter how aggressive you are, you will not win. When sellers say I can beat Amazon all the time, I tend to say, well, that's a selection bias, because I've also seen the inverse countless times. And so it leads me to believe that it very much just depends on the listing. And so my theory on this is, if Amazon has a ton of inventory that they need to be moving, they're going to prioritize themselves. It's their house, right? It's their platform. If it's a listing where they're not that focused on it, they'll probably just set up some auto rules themselves internally and just let it kind of ride and do its thing, and they're fine. So you kind of have to play with that, and you can figure that out, right? If you're really going up against Amazon and you start to reprice, just watch what they do. If they're playing nice, you're going to be fine. If you need to be $5 below them to pull the buy box from them, it's going to be a harder time. But every listing is so fundamentally different than the next. It's really hard. And again, this is why we like these frameworks versus like, here's exactly what to do, because it really comes down to all the different variables. And this is why we built Maven, right? It's like, there's a lot of things that we know what to do when that situation occurs, but we need to understand, is that situation occurring now or not? And it's really hard as humans to do, and using regular algorithms to do that. Instead, you want to rely on AI to be able to run its own experimentation to say, okay, well, what's true here, right? So that whole like testing against Amazon, Maven basically does that, right? But it's going to do that against all your competition. It's going to understand, for competitor A, I need to be 5 cents below them for whatever reason that we can't determine, to pull the buy box from them. For competitor B, I can match them and rotate the buy box all day. We need to understand the complexity of each listing to be able to optimize our strategies and behaviors to work within those constraints. And this is why in phase one of that life cycle, I have you start with Maven because it's going to do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. Um, and that's super important. It's going to continue to become more complex over time, as more data becomes available via the APIs. Listen, they change dynamics of things without telling anyone, right? We saw this during COVID. Merchant fulfilled offers started becoming more priority and higher weighted over Amazon fulfillment orders. That wasn't like an explicit thing. We just started to notice it. So we had to kind of shift our recommendations there. So for us, when we're thinking about building product, we're really thinking, we know it's the emergency fund problem, right? Like we know something can change. We don't know how it's going to change, but we know what are the levers that they can pull. And then what we can do is we can reassess in real time. Oh, that's starting to weigh differently. Let's react to that automatically. So it's just a different way to approach it. That's why it's so hard to build a repricing tool.
Yeah, and I've seen Amazon priced over $1 over a FBA seller who had a seller rating in the high 90s with good shipping times, and Amazon was just prioritizing themselves. So there really is no silver bullet, unfortunately. There's some theories maybe Amazon had a surplus of inventory for that category they were trying to get rid of. So just got to take everything with a grain of salt. One thing that happens on one listing is not going to be the same on a different one. So just important to always kind of just keep an eye on listing performance, because the competitive landscape of a listing can change almost instantly in 5 to 10 seconds. If your competition's using a repricer, sometimes the landscape won't change for a few days and then all of a sudden it takes off. So it is kind of a little touch and go on some listings for sure.
Yeah, Jeffrey, hopefully that all made sense. I know we rambled there, but there's a lot when you start getting into strategy optimization and design and stuff like that. But again, this is why we built Maven, so that you don't have to take a course on how to create strategies. The whole goal there is, how do we handle all that complexity, but remove that complexity from you, the end user, from the seller, so that you don't have 15 to 30 settings that you need to figure out and optimize perfectly. You have one, which is, how do you want to set your min values? We take care of all that complexity for you in real time. And there is some massive leverage for you in using Maven. That's fantastic. Now, AI does not handle every case. That's why we have, the last 2 phases in that life cycle we walked you through are rule-based strategies, because they're designed with a very specific outcome. That's why we rely on those. So rule-based, not bad. But you again, kind of like the Walmart, Amazon, you need to have this like portfolio approach. There are times when AI makes a great deal of sense, and there's times when it does not. When we started to build Maven, I was like, oh, it'd be great to get rid of rule-based strategies entirely and have this one crazy AI that handles everything. But once you get into it, you're like, that's not really how this works yet. Like, we're not quite there. Maybe in the future. But there's still a great value add in using rule-based strategies on that latter half of the life cycle of your inventory. But it is going to be interesting with the Walmart. Like, how do you reprice with both those? This is something we're talking through now, because in our discussions with Walmart sellers, the behavior on listings is very different. Prioritizing, like, you don't want to lose the buy box, right? Like, you get the buy box, you got to hold that sucker as long as you can. So there's going to be some things that make sense, works well, has always worked on Amazon, that just does not. It actually has a negative effect on Walmart. So I think what's important for us is that we're building a truly native Walmart repricer that's really using first principles, understanding the dynamics of that marketplace and how it's designed to work, and then building a repricing tool specifically for that, which is not really happening a whole lot right now. There's a lot of like just match my price from Amazon. The problem with that is, one, it's a Band-Aid. It's a quick thing you can do, but it doesn't really solve the core root problem. And number 2, if you can get higher prices on Walmart, why would you match your prices on Amazon. Right. So it negates the upside of being on Amazon or being on Walmart outside of obviously diversification, things of that nature. Um, so this is a big focus right now, which is exciting. It's a whole new thing, there's a lot of differences between Amazon and Walmart. That's for sure. Especially in the API, way more rudimentary than Amazon's documentation is. That's for sure.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Like you said, as Walmart kind of invests more into their third seller marketplace ecosystem, if you will, if they are able to kind of attract really talented high-end engineers to kind of improve things. I know we did talk about some inherent differences in their API and how that would potentially plug in with platforms such as Aura, other platforms you may be using as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting just to see how it evolves overall. Yeah, it'll be kind of fun to watch things unfold over the next few months and see how they adjust, how Amazon tries to maybe create more incentives to bring people back if they lose a heavy number of folks. So, I think it'll be a fun year.
Yeah. And I can say Amazon does care. I very much believe that. I've seen this in person when we went to their HQ in Seattle for Dev Summit. They were very adamant and like asking us a ton of feedback. They want to do amazing things. I think they're dealing with such a high amount of complexity and pulling those things off. I mean, listen, the amount of developers, the amount of sellers, simple solutions don't usually work in those kind of environments. There's so many edge cases and subtle nuances that they have to consider that is kind of going to keep them from moving super fast, because they also don't want to make a change that has a backlash or a negative impact on them either. So, they want to be, again, this goes to like, you have an asset, you want to be protective of it first and foremost. That kind of makes you be a little bit more caution, when you're making certain decisions. Oh, I love this. Bosley, Happy New Year. Thanks for the Aura team, and Maven is helping us finally reach 100K in sales. Love hearing that. That's fantastic, Bosley. That is awesome. I want to screenshot that one. That's good. And what's nice about it is doing that with Maven means you're doing even less work, right? It's not a collection of 5 to 7 repricing strategies. It's just Maven handling it, and that's awesome. I'm a big fan of the concept of leverage, especially technical leverage. To me, that's the most exciting. I struggle with all other forms of leverage except for tech, which makes sense. But that's fantastic. That is absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and like we said, I mean, we always encourage folks to still check in on their Aura account, make sure things are still operating quickly or properly rather. But with that being said, like we've said, the competitive landscape can change within seconds. So even if you are checking your account a couple times a week, even daily, Maven being assigned to those listings is going to be able to pick up on those quick changes, make sure that you're still in the best position possible to maximize the sales on your listings. So yeah, it definitely helps alleviate some of that manual work, but also works as an effective safety net should things really change drastically in a short period of time.
Yeah, 1,000%. See, I also tagged you all on X and IG with the Aura shirt on. Thanks for sending the shirts. Love it. Thank you for doing that. That's awesome. We we love getting shirts out, getting some swag out to our users. It's always fun for us, and we just like our swag. We love our shirts. They're really comfortable and really well designed. So we like that other people get to enjoy it as much as we do. I'm pretty sure, outside of when it's freezing like it is now, that's pretty much all I wear. Is just Aura black shirts. And then we have a custom like retreat shirt that's different. That's more of a unique drop, if you will. But I also love that one. Yes, they are. Love it. Yeah. Okay, good. So it's not just me being biased because I think they're comfortable. They really are comfortable. I very much dislike when companies have swag, but the shirts are like the old, what's that company? They make a ton of shirts, but they're so uncomfortable. They're thick and rigid. They don't breathe well. Gildan. Yeah, I think it's Gildan. Those are not great shirts. We use Bella and Canvas is the ones that we go with, and they are phenomenal. They fit well. They're mad comfortable. Yeah, Gildan. Yeah, exactly. You got it there, Bosley. Yeah. Don't love those shirts. Every time I get given one, I'm like, yeah, I'm good. It's uncomfortable, man. It's itchy. I don't like it.
Yeah, I've probably got 20 of those t-shirts from different sports camps and stuff when I was
Yep.
younger, in middle school and high school. And yeah, they always give you the shirt like on the first day, and then you're playing sports and it doesn't breathe at all, and you're sweating
No.
through it. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, especially growing up in Florida, like they would always give us those as camps and stuff in sports, like you said. And I was like, dude, I can't breathe. Like I'm sweating through this thing so fast. Yeah, it's like wearing cardboard. Exactly. So Bella and Canvas compared to Gildan feels like wearing silk, is what I'm trying to say. They actually breathe. All right, so we got about 10 minutes left here on the hour. So any additional questions, ideas, anything like that we can dive deeper into, go down those rabbit holes with everyone. We are more than happy to do so. But listen, it's a new year. I know we haven't been able to do this until the 8th of January. But I'm very bullish, very optimistic for 2025. I think there's going to be a lot of changes that are occurring. Again, that might feel chaotic. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but I think a lot of these changes that are happening are for the better. And I think our industry is really starting to innovate a little bit more, which is good. But listen, we got a lot of cool, interesting, cutting edge tech coming to the mainstream average person, which is going to enable a lot of cool stuff. A lot of things that were just not possible a year ago will be possible, if not already possible. So I think it's a good time to be optimistic about being in business, being in, having access to this kind of stuff. It's one of the first times in history outside of the internet itself where cutting edge tech is moving so fast, it's moving exponentially, and it's accessible. It's not just for the Fortune 500 companies who can sign $1 million contracts. It's easily usable. You can build your own stuff with it. Like it's a great time to be alive. So I think 2025 is going to be insane. I'm very excited for it. Let's see, Bosley, great question here, actually. I am always pondering if I should set Maven at 0% and let it run, or set it at a desired ROI, say 15 to 30%. Okay, so I have tested this where I set everything in our testing account to 0% ROI Maven. It was fine. No issues. Maven is designed, again, to find that and get you to that optimal price, which tends to be above the buy box. So you don't have this price tanking, behavior that occurs. Now, with that said, if you're saying it at 30% minimum ROI and the actual market is at 20%, yeah, you're going to go to 20% because that's where the market is. But we're going to keep trying to recover it higher, depending on where that optimal price is. So I can say with confidence that you can set Maven at 0% ROI and not really see any issues. Again, there are going to be cases where your price will go lower than the previous min, but that's where the market's at. It is what it is. I'm a big fan of going with the market versus just hoping the market comes to where you want it to be at. The market will dictate its environment and behaviors. But yeah, I see no problem in doing that. Definitely, you can test it. And actually, when we're thinking about like troubleshooting performance, I kind of have this like little phased approach where if somebody jumps into Aura, they're starting with Maven, they're like, hey, I'm not seeing great results. The first thing I look at is the minimum value being used on Maven, because you can't set this too high and actually pull back on performance. We've seen this, we've tested this, experimented, everything. The first thing you want to do, let's say you're setting at 30% ROI, take it to 15. See if that increases performance. In a lot of cases, it will. Now, that's not to say that let's say you go from 30 to 15%, you see a nice increase in performance. That's not to say that if you go from 15 to 0, you'll see even more increase in performance. It really just depends. But you're not really going to see any negative behaviors from doing that either, which is good. So there's really like not a whole lot to lose, if you will, in doing that.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend testing that on a portion of your inventory there.
Yeah.
With Maven being focused on that profitability, it's almost never going to price down to your min. The only time I've ever seen that was one time when the buy box was $5 below someone's set min price, which just indicates that your min price is probably too high. If you're $5 above the general market, then that's just going to happen sometimes. But
right,
just giving it a lower ROI percentage as the min just provides Maven with a wider range to test and optimize that performance. So it's essentially like letting a bird out of its cage and kind of letting it fly a little bit further. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to test that on a portion of your inventory and then react and adjust based on performance there.
Yeah, great question too. I remember testing this because I'm like, this is before we went public with it. I was like, I just need to know. Crazy, worst case scenario, what happens? And it was totally fine. I was like, oh, okay. That was anticlimactic too, right? Like everything was just fine. I was like, oh, okay, we're good here. So yeah, definitely no fear there. Any last minute questions from anyone? And again, we really appreciate everybody making the time. Hopefully this was value add for everyone who's been watching and jumping in and commenting and asking questions. We do this every Wednesday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. EST, unless we otherwise tell you we're not. And we just like to geek out, right? We like to make sure you have a chance to jump in, ask any questions, have a screen share, whatever. But with that said, please don't wait to ask questions. Live chat, Casey, Finn, they're always there. If you have a random idea, throw it into chat. What's cool is Aura works on your phone, including chat. So if you're laying in bed 2:00 in the morning and you're like, I have a random idea or question, great, shoot it over to us. We're happy to answer, happy to go in depth through a lot of stuff. Love it. It was good listening while I fight my shipment through list 2.0. I love it. Yeah, you got to love the new shipment API. I know a lot of companies are trying to move fast on that, if not already have done that, hopefully. Yeah, that's always fun when Amazon changes things. It's immediately hectic and a race to support it and get things figured out. So big ups to the companies that are doing well during that transition. Awesome. So I think we'll go ahead. It looks like we're out of questions here. So we're going to go ahead and start to wrap up. But again, appreciate everybody making the time. We love doing this. Thank you for all the great questions. We'll be here next week, next Wednesday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. EST. Again, don't wait. If you have not done an onboarding session, reach out to chat, ask to schedule one. We'll get you on the books. And yeah, appreciate you guys letting us geek out here and asking some great questions. Casey, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, have a good week, everybody. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks, everyone.